Welcome back to Extra Literary Affairs, a podcast for the lit curious reader, because why not read a little bit of everything? I'm Jennifer Smith.
And I'm Joey Kelly.
And today we are having an affair with Sui Sin Far and her short story, In the Land of the Free, from her short story collection, Mrs. Springtime Fragrance, which was published in 1912. This month, we are exploring different historical eras of the United States through literature. Sui Sin Far has kicked us off since she was born in 1865. The year that the Civil War ended, and she is also the oldest author on our list of selected works. But before we jump into the discussion of this week's story, I'd like to share a line from the Declaration of Independence. I recently attended TED Democracy Philadelphia, Founding Futures, right here where the country got its start 250 years ago. It was inspiring to gather with hundreds of fellow Americans to explore the past, the present, and the future of modern democracy in the birthplace of the United States, right here in Philly. Coincidentally, Joey, or not a coincidence, we are also following that same conversational arc this month on our podcast, Exploring America at 250. There's a preamble to the Declaration of Independence, but many people consider this to be the first line. And it goes as follows. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This week's story pointedly explores the gap between the American ideals and the lived reality of exclusion-era immigration law, which is as relevant today as it was during the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which inspired some of this story. Joey, would you like to give us some information about Sui Sin Far?
As a child, Sui Sin Far sold lace and paintings door to door to help make ends meet and support her parents during financial hardships. I think she was like 7 or 8 when she was doing this. Could you imagine this kid with this big painting or lace being like, hi, do you want to buy some? I mean, I guess it's not so far-fetched because Girl Scouts sell cookies, but it obviously sold. Hopefully she helped her family.
And she did not get a badge. She got no merit badges from that.
She just got whatever people would pay, and then she brought it home, and hopefully that kept them fed. She wrote under a flower-inspired Chinese pseudonym. Her real name was Edith Maud Eaton. She used the pen name Sui Sin Far, which means water fragrant flower, which is another name for the narcissus. Always going back to, obviously it's a flower, but obviously it's a Greek myth as well. She chose this Chinese name to write stories from inside the Chinese community, pushing back against Western writers who often treat her Chinese characters as a joke. She's considered the first Chinese-American novelist, despite never living in the U.S. until she was an adult. She's often called the first North American writer of Chinese descent to publish realistic fiction about Chinese immigration, but she's frequently labeled a Chinese-American pioneer, even though she was born in England and grew up in Canada and only moved to the U.S. in her late 20s. Her most famous collection is where we got the story from, Mrs. Spring Fragrance, which was published in 1912 in Chicago, cementing her place in American literary history.
Joey, I love those facts about her, and I had a couple more to add that I think are really relevant to the story and also to my understanding of who this person was, because prior to you selecting the story for us to explore, I had never heard of her. She had a sister who was also a writer who fully embraced passing. Her sister decided to embrace the white portions of her culture, but she very much downplayed her Chinese heritage. And I thought it was very interesting that the writer we are exploring today, she chose visibility over passing. She knew that she was going to get a lot of pushback, but she felt very strongly that the Chinese experience deserved to be told. What was also interesting is that her sister received some of this notoriety. I don't know if there was any sibling rivalry there, but it was just very interesting that they took very diverse paths in their literary career. And she was forgotten for decades after her death. She died in 1914, so not terribly long after her collection of short works was released. She was rediscovered by scholars in the 1980s and is now taught as a founding figure in Asian American literature. And I think it's interesting because in 1882, we had a Chinese Immigration Exclusion Act. Almost 100 years after that act was exclusionary to Chinese people coming to integrate into America, she was rediscovered by a whole group of new researchers and readers.
Before we dive into the story and our analysis, we can learn a little bit about what this story is about. In the Land of the Free, explores the challenges faced by Lei Chu, a Chinese immigrant mother in the early 20th century America. After discovering she is pregnant, Lei Chu returns to China to give birth, adhering to cultural expectations to care for her husband's aging parents, who also died. Upon returning to San Francisco with her son, she encounters immigration barriers due to bureaucratic complications concerning her child's documentation. Despite her and her husband Hong Hing's confidence that their child will be allowed to enter the country, they are met with resistance from immigration authorities, leading them to seek legal assistance. Lei Chu's sacrifice, including offering her jewelry for legal fees, highlights her desperation and determination. However, after a prolonged separation, the reunion with her son is bittersweet as he does not recognize her and runs back to the white missionaries who cared for him. So this narrative will dive into themes of motherhood, cultural identity, and the impact of immigration policies on families.
Joey, this was a really poignant story, and I know that you also had a strong reaction to it. I would like to start our conversation with the title, The Irony of American Freedom. The fact that she, out of the gate, puts it in our face that I am writing a story about in the land of the free. The only person who is not free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness is this woman with her child. Her husband came to the United States, became a very prominent merchant. He was living the American dream. His beautiful wife gets pregnant. It's like, hey, go back to China. That's where I want my son to be born, just like we were born there. And then it all unravels. And it just felt very bittersweet, a gap between what we as contemporary Americans think about. At least for me, it didn't occur to me to think about the people who were coming across the Pacific Ocean. All of my ideas of immigration in the United States in the early founding of our country focus on people coming from the Atlantic, people who look like me. This really helped broaden my perspective. How about you?
I think it's an ironic title, obviously. I like that she leads in with this title, The Land of the Free, because it's obviously part of our American cultural consciousness that this is our subtitle, The Land of the Free and the Home of the Brave. It's interesting that she's giving us this perspective that freedom is not an absolute in the United States. It depends on who you are and where you're coming from. There are no exceptions. You would think that a child who is, they say 20 moons, and that would be months. So he's about 2 years old, maybe a little shy of that. But you would assume the logical thing would be for immigration authorities to say, okay, this is a child. They're probably not going to get up to some shenanigans because they're a baby. So you are free to go, but just know that you do have to check in with us and we will make sure that the proper documents are put into place. And that does not happen. Obviously, they take their child and there are devastating consequences to that.
It feels like they impounded the child. They're like, I'm sorry, this is contraband that is not allowed into our country. We're going to separate you. The author also said it was white Christian missionaries who were responsible for the care of the child, as if he had been abandoned, as if he had no living parents or relatives to care for him. It was just heartbreaking. This is just a paperwork error. And I think about what was happening in the 1880s, 1890s, the early 1900s. I understand there are laws. They didn't go through Ellis Island, as we mentioned. They're coming from the West Coast, so they end up in the port of San Francisco. They're so excited to get off the boat. And the customs official actually said words to this effect, I hate this part of the job. I have the paperwork for the man. I have the paperwork for the mother, but I do not have the paperwork for a child. And the dad quipped, there was no child when we had our paperwork. Babies get made, they grow up. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is anything out of the ordinary here. It was just excruciating to watch the mother's anguish. And the father just took it in his stride of, there's really nothing we can do. It's the legal system, it's money. It felt like a detention center. Literally, these missionaries are like, hey, we'll take your unwanted children. It's not an unwanted child, it's an undocumented child, which you literally stole from me. My child is my property. I created it. It is mine. And you have removed it from my custody. It's just really ringing a lot of bells for me, what's currently happening in the United States for immigrants of all kinds. Very bittersweet to think we've had 250 years to sort this out. And I don't think we're doing a really good job managing it today.
Nope, I would agree. But I think what you were saying with how the father, Hom Hing, reacts, there's a line, thus was the law of the land complied with. That is not what the father says, but we get the sense that this is what he is thinking. He does not have a choice. These are the laws of the United States, and he has to comply and abide by them. I also think we should take into consideration, this is the first time he's met his own child.
In the history of fatherhood, this is his first moment.
Yeah, the child does not know him, and he does not know his own child. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. We do understand the circumstances. They wanted their child to be born in China, especially after Lei Chu has the dream, and they take it as this sign that their child is meant to be born in China and be a Chinese national. But I think it's important that we have that context that there's no bond. There is a parental bond you probably would normally have after learning that your wife is pregnant. It seems like he was pretty excited about to be a father. But for me, I kept thinking like, you are having such a different reaction because you had a pony in the race, but you didn't have as big of a pony in the race. It was less high stakes for you because you had yet to interact with your own child. So you're not breaking a norm.
Speaking about cultural norms, the fact that it is a son, right, highly prized in Chinese culture at that time was also a big deal. The mom said to the father, you have not held this child both physically inside your body while he was being gestated before my child was born, our child was born. I've seen him every moment and every day of his life. He has never been separated from me. It felt like her guts, her heart, her soul was ripped out and ripped away, but he was like, we'll get him back. Tomorrow, just come home, don't cause a fuss, we'll get a lawyer. Again, even back then, you had to lawyer up, you had to pay the fees, you had to do all of the things that we are currently struggling with families who are having their children forcibly removed due to immigration complications and absurdity. She's like, okay, it'll just be a day, we'll get him back, it will be fine. And a day drags on and on and on. The man was talking to a neighbor and he was like, I don't know if my wife is physically going to survive the loss of our child at this moment, a unnecessary loss. The child did not get sick. The child is not dead. It did not befall an accident. It simply was removed because there were bureaucratic reasons that somebody had to check the box and say, you don't have the right paperwork. Please hold. So they hire a lawyer. He had a lawyer for his business as being a successful merchant in San Francisco, but not like rolling in the dough, just keeping it above water. He's making his way into the city. The lawyer's like $500. He's like, okay, you know I don't have any money, right? You've done my books. I gave you all the money to get my business started. You know I have no money. And the mom is like, I am so desperate. Here is my jewelry that my parents bequeathed as my dowry. Take my jade rings, take my gold, take this. And I did have to give the lawyer a little bit of props for being like, I can't take this.
No, you're always playing the devil's advocate.
Well, he felt bad, Joey. But then I was like, okay, well, then I'll crank up my capitalism on this. That he's like, I can't take this. Does this look like a $500 bill? No, it does not. It looks like a hunk of gold. But Joey, I will remind you, in 1849, there was a gold rush in California. So there was a huge influx of people flocking from all places. So gold is gold. It's called the gold standard for a reason. This actually has monetary value that would be easy to transfer if you should do it. So the lawyer's like, okay, sounds great. You will not be getting a receipt for this. I'll be back and see what I can do. And the dad's like, oh, we did everything we could do, but it took so much time, Joey, and I'm sure we're going to circle back to this, that the wife is literally wasting away. She just can't function without her child, and she shouldn't have to. She finally gets the paper. It's like, all right, this is awesome. The paper came through. Finally, Pony Express came through for us. I appreciate it. She goes to pick up her child, and he doesn't recognize her. And the Christian missionary nuns caretaker say, yeah, after the first month of taking away a small child from its parents, it's very, very upset. But after that first month, it pretty much forgets about it, and we're the parents now. So good luck. It was just so heartbreaking because it was completely 100% unnecessary for that to occur. And now that family is shattered. Do they keep him? Does the mother go drown herself in a river because my one and only child, who I love more than my own life, has shunned me, sees me as other? Instead of mother, I've been othered. It makes my body hurt feeling her grief.
Yeah, this story has a lot to do with motherhood, especially because of Lei Chu's relationship with her son, because she has obviously been his sole caregiver for his almost 2 years of being alive. I don't think she would normally be very reliant on other people. Back in China, that's a lot for one person to take on, a newborn baby and two elderly people with failing health. That's a lot. That's basically 3 babies, depending on how advanced their illnesses were. But I do want to read one excerpt from the discussion that Lei Cho has with her husband right after their son has been taken by immigration enforcement. He wakes up the next day and he's like, "Did you sleep?" And I wanted to be like, "Bro, are you sure that's what you want to say?" Far writes, "Slept," she echoed weepingly. "Ah, how could I close my eyes with my arms empty of the little body that has filled them every night for more than 20 moons? You do not know, man, what it is to miss the feel of the little fingers and the little toes and the soft round limbs of your little one. Even in the darkness, his darling eyes used to shine up to mine, and often have I fallen into slumber and his pretty babble in my ear. And now I see him not, I touch him not, I hear him not. My baby, my little fat one." Which is very cute. She calls it my little fat one. It's a heartbreaking moment because we can see the disparity in the relationship that both parents have with their child, and that their son is very much a part of Lei Cho's everyday life. He is her reason for living at this point, and this was completely unanticipated. Despite her independence, I think she still is heavily reliant on her husband for guidance. And there is this sort of marital piety where she's not subservient, but she is a little less independent when it comes to her husband. She trusts that what he says will be correct. There is this sense of loss, obviously, from her child, but it's very heavy emotionally because I think she's also feeling betrayed by her husband for giving her terrible advice. The only other thing they could have done was get back onto whatever ship they were on and head back to China, and I'm sure that would have been hard to do. They didn't have many options.
I appreciate that because the husband, he stayed behind. So he has at least 2 years, if not more, of language training, of being assimilated into the culture in San Francisco. He has the ability to read the letter. The wife is struggling with her English, which is noted in the story. So not only does she have maybe a cultural blueprint to yield to the wisdom and the guidance of her husband, that the man will be making these decisions, she also doesn't have the language to defend herself. She is using broken English, but when she speaks in Chinese, it's these beautiful flowing sentences. All I could think when we were reading this is Ken Liu, the paper menagerie, a mother who is not able to communicate with her son in English, which is the child who lives in America. Contemporarily, he's like, "I'm so embarrassed by my mom. She's Chinese and she's just so weird. I just wish she could be normal. I just want a normal mom like my normal American dad." And we saw how heartbreaking that was to lose the culture. She's not trying to take the culture away from her child. She's like, "We're Americans. We want to be here. We are building our family. We are building our family's wealth. We want to establish something here." Because when you said, "Well, just get back on the boat. If they don't let you stay, get on the boat and go back." And I thought, okay, without my husband, I just spent 2 years birthing a baby and taking care of his dying parents all by myself, as you very clearly articulated. And now I'm going to abandon everything we've worked for many years to just jump on a boat and head back to China. Never mind, that whole American experiment wasn't for us. And yeah, I'm really fired up by this story in a different way than I was fired up with the Ken Liu paper menagerie story. Turn on the TV, watch a news program for 5 minutes, and you are going to hear this story repeated ad nauseum. It's not going away.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest difference, and I don't know how true it was at this time, is that Far writes that the immigration authority person was like, "I don't like this part of the job, separating families." And that is not the case anymore with immigration enforcement in the United States. So, man, it's your birthday, America. You're bad. That's why you're getting no gifts from me.
Joey, I appreciate you said that. I read an article recently where they talked about on your birthday, we should celebrate you. Hooray, you exist. You're in the world. But it's also a time for a lot of people to sit back and reflect on what they've done over the last year, 10 years, 25 years, 50, these big milestone birthdays. Hello, America. You're looking a little tattered around the edges. That's okay. You're 250. Maybe you want to think about the things that brought you to this moment. And do you want more of that in the future, or do you want less of that in the future? You choose.
I'm going to buy you a mirror, America, so you can self-reflect. We were talking about the language for a minute there. Yes, I immediately thought of Ken Liu's The Paper Menagerie, which, again, one of the most beautiful stories that we've ever read on the channel. We've read a lot of good stories, but that's definitely one that we bring up a lot, so everyone should read that. There is this language barrier that really inhibits Lei Chu from being able to articulate herself and even understand what's going on in the moment. Because when her son is being taken and her husband is trying to figure out, why are you saying this to me? She's left out of the loop until he can explain to her. And I believe he explains it in English. He does not translate it to Chinese. He just simplifies the way he's explaining it in English. So we can see, to your point, that they are trying to assimilate to American culture by using the language, even though America does not have a nationalized language. We do not. English is not our language. Anyway, it should probably be Spanish, be fair.
Joey, thank you for saying that. The husband obviously speaks fluent Chinese. The wife, fluent in Chinese. They were in front of these American officials who are like, hey, tough break, but you don't have the right paperwork. We're confiscating your child. We are forcibly removing him from your arms. The kid is putting up a fight, does not want to be separated from its mother, the only parent it has known. Instead of the husband quickly translating in Chinese, this is a temporary setback, this is what we need to do, we need money, don't worry, I'll handle it. All the things he could have said in 30 seconds in Chinese and guaranteed she understood the nuance, the flavor, the tone of voice, whatever. No, I have to say it in English, and I have to use rudimentary language because my wife does not have the fluency that she would have. And heaven forbid, Joey, heaven forbid, a foreign couple speak in a foreign language in front of an English only speaking official. What was that going to do to their case? They didn't even have the freedom to use their language to express themselves to each other without some stigma of, what are you guys saying? What are you doing? What are you plotting? How dare you use a language I don't understand?
Yeah, I think he has to see what is the benefit in that moment of using their native tongue to communicate more efficiently. Obviously, ultimately decides. He only says it in English.
We're watching from the outside this experience unfolding, and we hear her dialogue that says, my heart is breaking. My child was an integral part of my humanity, of my being, which has literally been stripped from me. We hear her say that to someone. We don't ever get inside of her mind to know anything more about this. This is definitely an outsider looking into an observed experience.
It's just a bad situation, and he was trying to make the best decision that would hopefully save them a little face in this scenario. But I get the impression that, at least to Sui Sin Far, that she was not trying to necessarily demonize this individual worker. Now, that would be a very different case if we were to talk about today, where you absolutely should do that. I think she was saying the institution, the establishment, the bureaucracy of this is to blame, and not this individual cog in the wheel of this man, who I would also go out of the way and say he probably could have said, yeah, go on in. It's okay. They're a baby. Just get it taken care of, please. Do the right paperwork, blah, blah, blah. This family would have done it. They weren't negligent.
Everything else was intact. That is a great thing to say. They went through the procedure for themselves. They were completely legitimate with their paperwork. I don't think it occurred to them. The father said, this is my child. There's no claims of paternity or anything that was going on. I live here. I have my paperwork. I have my child. What's the problem? Legitimately, what is the problem? We had read a story last week or the week before where I thought a woman had supernatural abilities to be invisible. And she said, I wasn't invisible. People just decided to turn a blind eye to let me pass through, to create a situation where her immigration journey could continue. They had the chance to look away and let it pass, or they had the chance to blow the whistle and call out the British version of ICE to haul that girl away when we were talking about spring. I digress, Joey. I do recall that you had a beautiful passage about the language the mother used to describe her child. Would you read that to us?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to try to, if for anyone that has not read it, it's free online because it's very old, as we mentioned.
Super short.
Yeah, it is very short. There is a very stark difference between how she's able to articulate herself in Chinese and how she's able to do that in English. And so in Chinese, she says in the beginning of the story, yes, my olive bud, this is where thy father is making a fortune for thee. Thy father, oh, wilt thou not be glad to behold his dear face? 'Twas for thee I left him. So a little dated. And I'm curious, to anybody that speaks Chinese, how closely could you translate this into Chinese? was this dated language? Because probably even in the late 19th century, this seems pretty dated. This is not early modern English, but it's a little bit closer to that. I just feel like it's very dated. So I'm curious, is this trying to communicate that she is maybe from a higher socioeconomic class? Maybe she's speaking to differentiate that? Or is she putting on airs or something? Is she from a lower class and trying to hide that by speaking, I don't want to say archaic, but a little old fashioned? I don't know. But that's interesting. We can compare that to what we know she says in English when they're taking her son. She says, "No, you not take him. He my son too." So she's speaking in broken English. Obviously, this is not a language that she has to converse in. She knows enough to be able to speak to that and stick up for herself and for her son. But you can see there is a huge difference in how she's able to speak.
She has another couple of just really beautiful phrases in Chinese that have this poetry and this grace to it. And again, it wasn't archaic where she's speaking it aloud. It's more that she's thinking about her homeland, the beautiful hills, where they want this child to be born. That poetic, I had a dream about the red flower, that all was just really lyrical and beautiful and sensual. All of that was in it. But in her ability to speak English to defend herself and her child, it falls flat. It's out of time. It doesn't flow. You obviously can see that her intellect, her curiosity, her articulation is just robbed from her by having to use a language that's not hers yet. I think she'll get there, but she's not there today.
She was already feeling so at a loss, like she was not in control of the situation because she wasn't. She's a woman, an immigrant woman at that, in a very delicate situation where she is trying to gain entry into a new country. So she's at a disadvantage. And then on top of that, she's not even able to say what she really needs to say out loud. She could say it in Chinese, but obviously immigration authorities are not going to be able to understand her. So she'd be saying it for nothing. So she's trying her best to stop what's going on. But I can't imagine what that must have felt like for her, just seeing everything is going on in front of you and you are literally powerless. Oh, you literally can't even say it.
Joey, one thing that was interesting is that when the child has been taken, they are still throwing this party. She brought all these gifts from China, specifically Chinese goods, to share with her friends in San Francisco. This story was written during a time when it was published. Americans were a little fascinated with the Orient. There was this Oriental fetishism that was going on. Oh, this is such an interesting culture. We should embrace it. Look at all of their wares that we want to have integrated in the United States. If we think about our world today, importing things from China, the conflicts we're in, all of this stuff is so disturbingly and infuriatingly circular throughout time. The more we read about current conditions, this literally is nothing new. We have been doing this. We've been appropriating cultures. We take the things we like. We discard the people who've made it. We discard the people who have the opportunity to come here because we're full. We've had enough. You don't have the resources we want, so we don't need that. It was just really quite disturbing, but I'm still hopeful, Joey. We still have some hope. Was thinking about what you alluded to earlier. Was this bureaucracy as violence? Was this a legitimate attempt by the United States back in the 1880s to separate families, to obliterate culture, to force assimilation? If you don't like it, get on the boat and leave, that type of attitude? Or was it simply bureaucracy doing what bureaucracy does? I have a box to check. You didn't check the box. Go to the back of the line. This absurd cycle of paperwork. It was just very interesting for me to think about the barriers that we put in place. I keep going back to our conversation of spring, where a very wise person in the story said, after everything these families have done, they've crossed war zones, they've crossed the ocean, they've had to beg on the street, they've walked 20 miles, whatever their circumstance to bring them here. Our dirty looks and our rude language about their immigration status or who they are is so small, still hurtful, but so small as opposed to the real life physical challenges they had to overcome even to get here. The least we can do is be decent. The bare minimum is to treat them as human beings who deserve dignity and respect. Could we start there, maybe?
I would say that the United States probably was always being a dick about it. And that's my take on that. But if you want to know something hopeful, okay, We're recording this on June 16th, okay, and it's relevant what I'm about to say, why that's important. Because as many people know, the World Cup is being hosted. We're one of the hosting nations in the United States here. And people of the world are coming to the United States to interact with the World Cup because I think it's the most popular sport in the entire world. People are taking to social media who are not from the United States and who are coming here for the first time and are being like, oh my God, you guys, this place is great. They got great food. Everyone's super friendly. It's beautiful here. Okay. I've been seeing under the comments on a lot of these videos from our fellow Americans saying, listen, we're cool. We're under bad management currently. Okay. Valid. But we're actually pretty cool. Okay. We got a lot to offer you here in the United States. So even though we were saying, you're bad, America, you're bad, 250 years badness, okay? There is some hope in that individually as people, we are still very kind and we do have a lot to offer the world. And I'm glad that we had this moment, especially right now with the current administration and all of the bullshit that's currently happening. So many people from around the world came to congregate in the United States and were like, huh, you're not all bad. We thought you were all bad, but you're not. And that's pretty cool.
Joey, I love that you ended on this hopeful message. And I love that you planted this thought in my mind. We are like a beautiful mansion venue that just happens to be under bad management, and our toilets are overflowing right now.
Yeah,
the rest of the place is great.
We got cockroaches.
We'll get this management thing under control. The bones of our property and our people are amazing. And you just wait and see what's coming next. So thank you for that hopeful message. Of course, you always have to take me to a cynical place, even when you're trying to be hopeful, Joey. So it's not your fault. I'm just going to say it's not your fault. When you said people were coming and visiting and they're posting to their global audience, to their friends back home, America, she's got some things going for her. This is a really cool place. I'm like, yeah, if you didn't get stopped at the border, you have valid paperwork, you have enough money to fly to the United States, and you have economic freedom and social freedom to come into the country. I appreciate all of that. I'm so glad that is working out for them. It's very funny that our roles are reversed, where you're like, hey, America, we've got some great things going. And I'm like, well, actually, Joey, it's only for the people who have the money to do so. I was feeling cynical about my own cynicalness.
Well, at least one person I know, it was one of the refs from one of the games who is from Somalia, was turned away and was denied entry into the United States and was told to go back to Somalia, which he did. And then his people were like, yay, welcome back. We love you here.
We're so glad you made it back safely, right? It's not always safe to be a person of color in the United States.
Yeah, so I don't know how many people that has happened to. He was just in the news, and that's how I happened to see that. But on a positive note, welcome, everybody. I don't know when the World Cup is going to happen, so if this is still happening, when this goes out, welcome to the United States. We're so happy you're here. Don't worry about management. We don't like them anyway, so it doesn't matter. And that's it.
Next week, we're going to move into a different era.
Yes, next week we're going to be reading a chapter, but it could be read as its own short story, Battle Royale by Ralph Ellison. That's a chapter from Invisible Man. Thank you so much for watching or listening to today's episode. So if you like today's episode, please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow us on social media at Extra Literary Fairs.
Awesome. Thanks, Joey. See you next week for Battle Royale, which was not inspired by the UFC cage match that just took place on the White House lawn. So looking forward to exploring the true and original story with you next week.